Antonius Robin, author of Political Violence and Trauma in Argentina, is a professor in the anthropology department at Utrecht University in the Netherlands. He received his PhD from Berkeley and has been author or editor of a number of books. Thanks to his many grants he has received, he has been able to spend more than 5 years completing fieldwork in Latin America, mostly in Argentina. This particular book, published in 2005, focuses on the political and social changes undergone in Argentina due to the cycles of violence and trauma. Robin explains the spiral of violence and trauma over time through many different points of view and covering many sides. He discusses the perceptions, actions, and justifications of each. The first section of Robin's book talks about 1945 through 1976 and the role crowds played in Argentina's politics. Robin presents the crowds as a political and social force that was a central figure in the country's politics. Crowds played such an important part during this period of time that people packing in public areas became the symbol for a leader's political legitimacy for all presidents and dictators following after Perón. Robin discusses the upper class's uneasiness with such large crowds and how Perón was able to control these large groups of people by teaching them the steps to take and actions to follow whether he was present or not. He describes Perón's control of the people as a type of point them in the right direction and let them do the rest. The second section of the book covered Argentina from 1955 through 1976, which became all about the political violence taking place around the country. It talks about the rise and fall of guerrilla fighters' popularity and the military. Robin gives accounts of some of the groups and their ideological positions, as well as the acts they carried out. This section of the book tells of the counterinsurgency which crushed guerrilla organizations and the trauma to society which was so extreme that virtually no one was willing to protest. The third section was devoted to the military regime and the state of terror that was in place throughout Argentina in 1976 until 1983. He discusses the abductions and disappearances of people and their oppression and trauma inflicted upon the citizens. Robin explains how the torture and disappearances were used to break social structures. The military had expected that the disappearances of so many people would cause the relatives to go into a state of depression, but this failed. The effect was the opposite. The emotions between parents and children were so strong that it drove people to become mobile, and these ties were strengthened because of the military repression on human rights movements. This section depicts the decades of military rule filled with repression, killings of revenge, and terror put in place by the military regime, which ultimately changed Argentina's society. The fourth section of Robin's book talks about the search for missing people, starting in 1976 and continuing through the 1990s. Robin tells how the search for the disappeared led to resistance by the people during the dictatorship and post-dictatorship periods. He also used this section of the book to discuss collective memory and how the cycles of violence and trauma throughout Argentina's recent history led the people to compile a collective memory. Robin's book, Political Violence and Trauma in Argentina, has one main theme throughout. Robin challenges the conventional way of thought about violence. That violence causes more violence by saying that this does not work for Argentina, but instead that violence leads to trauma and that trauma causes more violence to ensue. He claims this creates a downward spiral of violence and trauma. Robin also tells us that in Argentina, an increase in violence was mediated by trauma, and this cycle only stopped when one side out-traumatized the other. This book is unique in that it combines history and anthropology to provide the reader with a different view of the events of the Argentine Revolution. Robin uses a good variety of first and secondary sources throughout his work, such as archival research, interviews, and persistent observation. This book does a good job of being thorough with the topics of military regime and the abduction of citizens. A good portion of the book is spent on explaining the repressiveness of the military regimes and the social terror associated with abductions and torture. While Robin talks about Peronism, I feel she should have put more emphasis on Peronism and the role of Evita Perón in life and her lasting effects after death. Evita had a large impact on the way the people of Argentina perceived and responded to Perón, and I feel the book did not spend enough time discussing this. Robin spends a great deal of time on the topic of trauma and its effect and role it has throughout all these stages, but he does not explain what he means by trauma until the end of the book. This information would have been far more helpful in the beginning of the book. I found the quality of this book to be very good. It was informative and took a new way of looking at the Argentine Revolution. The book was easy to read, and Robin explained his ideas in a clear and straightforward manner. Political violence and trauma in Argentina added a lot to my knowledge of Argentina's history, and I would suggest for people to add it to their book collection.